Now, it's no secret that I've got a bit of a love affair with James Cameron movies. In fact, I've spent nearly 10 hours ejaculating over Aliens and Terminator 2. You know, back when Terminator actually told a viable story, instead of overwriting their own continuity and soiling their legacy with increasingly desperate attempts to jumpstart a new franchise. Anyway, back to James Cameron. The man's been responsible for some of the greatest blockbuster movies ever made, using a unique combination of fast-paced, hard-hitting action, groundbreaking new technology, meticulous attention to detail, inspired casting choices, strong writing, and iconic characters to bring his artistic visions to life. Nice one, Jim. The problem with all this success is that eventually it can go to your head. With no one left who has the balls to call you out, challenge your ideas, or rein in your ego when you need it, you're free to be as impulsive, excessive, and self-indulgent as you like, and the quality of your creative output inevitably suffers. Just ask George Lucas. In Cameron's case, the end result of this uncontrolled burst of ego-driven creativity was Avatar, the most successful bad movie ever made. But drinker, you indefatigable Renaissance man, I hear you say, Avatar made almost $3 billion. How can you possibly claim it's bad when it's one of the biggest movies ever made? Because, my simple-minded friend, box office revenue doesn't determine whether a film is objectively good. I can't believe I'm actually having to say this, but gate receipts don't make something a meaningful artistic endeavour. If they did, then Resident Evil would be just as culturally significant as Schindler's List. The sad reality of cinema is that sometimes bad films make lots of money and really good films don't make any. And this particular bad film made a shitload of money. See, the world went absolutely nuts for Avatar back in 2009, and to this day I still don't know exactly why. It's like we all switched off our brains for 2.5 hours, stared at all the pretty colours, and somehow bought into the collective delusion that we'd just witnessed the greatest spectacle in modern cinema. People were even claiming to suffer from fucking depression when they had to leave Pandora and go back to the mundane reality of their real lives. Yeah, try growing up in Scotland, you dicks. Anyway, now it's a decade later and we've had plenty of other spectacles to, marvel at. And since we've been hearing more and more noise about the first of 4 sequels that's due to hit cinemas next year, I guess this is as good a time as any to revisit the original Avatar and see if I can make sense of this bullshit. So grab your shots of unobtainium and let's begin. Avatar kicks off in the mid-22nd century, and things are looking bad for the human race. Earth's natural resources have been depleted, forcing mankind to spread out into the galaxy in order to survive. The search for new resources eventually leads to the jungle world of Pandora, and the discovery of a new energy source called unobtainium. Aye, fine, whatever. The only problem is the primitive natives of Pandora, a race of giant blue smurf people called the Na'vi, who are kind of hostile to the humans encroaching on their territory. Oh no, a group of technologically advanced invaders gradually displacing the peaceful but primitive indigenous peoples from their land so they can plunder it for wealth and resources. Whatever could this be a reference to? Anyway, to help explore Pandora, the humans have invented artificial Na'vi bodies that they can download their consciousness into. Avatars, if you will. Why go to the trouble of creating massively complex and expensive alien bodies to walk around in when satellite mapping, aerial reconnaissance, unmanned drones, robotic probes, and fucking respirators are already available and easily to use? Because the script needs the plot to happen, I guess. Anyway, this is where we meet the plank of wood that serves as the main character. Jake Sully is a paralysed war veteran whose twin brother was originally going to pilot one of these avatars, but then he got killed, and because it's only compatible with his genetic code, Jake is given the chance to control it instead. Okay, it's kind of clunky, but I can live with it, I guess. So Jake accepts the offer and goes to Pandora, and this is where we get introduced to the 3 main factions at work. First, there's the group of scientists led by Ellen Ripley who operate the avatars and try to maintain a peaceful relationship with the Na'vi. Then there's the military led by Colonel Quaritch who are supposed to protect the mining operation for the unobtainium, but basically just want an excuse to kill things. Lastly, there's Parker Selfridge, a slimy corporate asshole who runs the show and doesn't much care what happens as long as his company keeps making money. So basically, we've got a peaceful, environmentally harmonious indigenous people under threat from the twin evils of greedy corporate capitalism and a destructive warmongering military. You know, we tend to think of preachy political grandstanding in movies as being a pretty modern phenomenon, but James Cameron was doing this shit way back in 2009. Anyway, Jake downloads into his avatar and off he goes. But soon enough, his recon team gets attacked by a CGI monster and he's forced to go on the run, which brings him into contact with this sexy blue minx. Her name's Neytiri, and she's about to shoot him, but a jellyfish floats by and it's like, nah, it'll be fine. Wow, that was lucky timing. Anyway, Neytiri takes him into her tribe and starts to teach him her ways so he can learn more about their culture. What does this remind me of? Nah, I got nothing. I love how he's been there for like 5 minutes and he's already managed to achieve more than the other scientists have done in years. Isn't plot convenience a wonderful thing? Now, Quaritch thinks this is all fantastic and orders Jake to spy on the Na'vi for him. Why? Don't know. They're fucking primitive hunters, mate. It's not like they have strategic war plans for you to uncover. Anyway, I think you can see the moral conundrum here. The more time Jake spends with the Na'vi, the more he finds himself sympathizing with their situation and questioning his loyalty to the humans. And it doesn't hurt that he's got this fine piece of blue ass to come back to. What's this? A beautiful native girl who takes a romantic liking to the mysterious outsider, providing a conduit for him to integrate into her culture? Where have I seen this before? The final straw comes when the humans send a comically huge excavator into Na'vi territory and Jake attacks it. What does this remind me of? So with the Na'vi up in arms, the battle lines are drawn. Quaritch puts Jake and the scientists under arrest and convinces Selfridge to authorize an airstrike on the Na'vi, which kills a whole bunch of them and knocks their giant tree over like a big building coming down. What does this remind me of? Things are looking bad for our intrepid heroes, but then Michelle Rodriguez shows up, playing an angry, tough-talking Sarah Connor wannabe. You know, just like every other role of her entire career. She rescues the gang from prison and they escape, but Ellen Ripley gets wounded in the crossfire, so they take her to a different giant tree, and the Na'vi try to transfer her mind into her avatar body permanently. What the fuck? How is any of this happening? I mean, how is there even a mechanism for something like this? When have you ever been required to transfer a human consciousness into a biological remote-controlled robot? Have you done this kind of thing before with other people? Can anyone download into anything else? I know which body I'd go for. Anyway, it doesn't work and she dies. Oh no, I hope Jake doesn't get put into a similar position at the end of the movie, because that would be terrible. Well, I suppose I should at least give Cameron some credit for setting up this plot device in advance, instead of just pulling it out of his arse with no warning, like J.J. Abrams probably would have done. So I guess it's time for the big finale. Quaritch sends all his forces to bomb what's left of the Na'vi into oblivion, while Jake rallies all of the warriors to defend it, becoming a savior to them. A white savior, if you will. Then there's a bunch of fight scenes, and Michelle Rodriguez gets blown up, and there's a funny shot where Neytiri gets stunned by a nearby explosion and sees the battle happening in a slow motion daze. Where have I seen this before? Naturally, the bomber gets blown up at the last second, and it all comes down to a fist fight between Quaritch and Jake. A human in a mech suit versus a dangerous alien, eh? Where have I? Nah, never mind. So Quaritch gets the upper hand by damaging the pod that houses Jake's human form and exposing him to the toxic atmosphere. Wow, lucky he happened to crash land so close to that thing, eh? But it's okay, because Neytiri shows up at the last second and makes sure that he gets the point. And the movie ends with Jake going through the magical download process, which works this time because he remembers remember to wear his plot armor. And that's it. That's the plot for Dances with Fern Gully Pocahontas aliens while saving Private Ryan from 9/11. Now, it's a well-known fact that I'm a cheerful, optimistic soul who tries to see the very best in everything, so traditionally, I like to start my reviews by highlighting the positive aspects of a movie. It looks nice, I guess. I've never gotten particularly excited over stuff like shot composition, colour palettes or camera angles, and generally I'm of the opinion that most big budget movies made in the past 15 years look tolerably good, with a few exceptions of course. But even I recognise that Avatar is a visual masterpiece filled with vibrant colours, breathtaking landscapes, and fascinating alien ecosystems. Yeah, it doesn't make much sense when you think about the logistics behind it, but powering down your brain and watching it unfold for the first time in a 3D movie theatre was a pretty impressive experience, helped by an excellent soundtrack that really captures the feeling of wonder and adventure. Which is just as well because the rest of this movie's a steaming pile of donkey shit. The biggest bone of contention with Avatar has to be its story, which feels like a cheesy, simplistic amalgamation of ideas pilfered from 5 or 6 other better movies. A flawed but sympathetic protagonist drawn into a brewing conflict between two antagonistic peoples, gradually questioning his preconceptions as he learns more about his supposedly brutal and savage hosts. A cautionary environmental message about the dangers of callously exploiting the resources of a lush but dangerous paradise without considering the wider implications of these actions. A romantic love affair between two characters from vastly different cultures, set against the backdrop of an epic confrontation. It's all been done a million times before, and while I acknowledge that there's nothing inherently wrong about reusing classic tropes and ideas, and if you break them down far enough, most movies contain the same basic foundational plot elements, but Jesus, you can at least try to put an original spin on it. You could introduce a bit of nuance and complexity, encouraging the audience to look at a well-worn story from a fresh perspective. Or you can do what Avatar does and take the simplest, quickest and easiest route to your end goal, using every dirty trick in the book to get a reaction. Take the Na'vi for example. They're practically a textbook example of how to emotionally manipulate your audience. They're similar enough to us in general appearance that viewers can impose human identity on them and see them as people even if they technically aren't. They're graceful and aesthetically pleasing, so the romantic relationship between Jake and Neytiri doesn't come across as weird and uncomfortable. Because let's face it, if the Na'vi happen to look like this, or this, or this, then Avatar would be a very different movie. They even have big, innocent, trusting eyes typically associated with animals, because nobody likes to see an animal getting hurt or killed. Lastly, they're portrayed as living in peaceful harmony with their environment, while the humans are violent and destructive, taking what they want and killing anyone who stands in their way. As an interesting little comparison, consider the aliens from District 9. They certainly don't look attractive, and they don't seem to have any redeeming qualities at first glance, but the difference here is that District 9's script actually puts in the work to help you understand their origins and empathise with their situation, and by the end, you're rooting for them just as much as the protagonist. It doesn't matter that they look like giant prawns. The Na'vi, on the other hand, come across as kind of creepy and manipulative when you consider the motivation behind them. You're expected to like them because they look nice and they're being oppressed by evil people. That's it. Now, this is where strong characterization could really help out. Many a dull story has been elevated by complex characters and great performances, and in this case we've got... I'm honestly struggling to think of something interesting to say about Jake Sully. As far as protagonists go, he's kind of a black hole of personality and charisma. I mean, he got injured and he's in a wheelchair now, so that's something, I guess. But even that doesn't seem to give us much to work with. I never got a sense of a once proud and formidable man struggling with the limitations of his physical condition or bitter about the opportunities that he's lost. It's not helped by an anemic performance from Sam Worthington, who generally acts like he can't quite believe he's starring in a big budget movie, and as a result, neither can I. He doesn't have the charisma, the screen presence, the magnetism, or the acting chops to carry a movie like this, and the problems only get worse when he's buried under a layer of CGI. lie. If I was feeling super charitable, I'd say Jake was intentionally written to be as generic as possible, played by an unmemorable actor, so he could become a kind of avatar for the audience to project themselves onto. But that's probably giving the film too much credit. Neytiri isn't much better. She gets the occasional feisty moment, but honestly, I never got a sense of who she was, what drives and motivates her, what she values and fears. I mean, she falls in love with Jake because the script needs it to happen, but I don't really understand why. Also, this is kind of a nitpick, but if you're gonna give her an outfit that leaves her boobs exposed, don't resort to the old strategic nipple covering routine. It just makes her look like a character from a JRPG. Now, I'd love to say that the antagonist totally saves this movie, but that would be a big old lie. I mean, Stephen Lang certainly gives it his best shot, and compared to Worthington, he's definitely a commanding presence, but the script doesn't really give him much to work with. Quaritch isn't the kind of guy I wanted to know more about, because there's nothing to know. There's no tragic backstory, no personality flaws or outside pressures that put him on a collision course with the Na'vi. He's just a guy that likes to blow stuff up. The best antagonists are the ones with understandable motivations. The kind of guys you almost feel like you could agree with if things were slightly different. Like Thanos from Infinity War, for example. He's personally witnessed the devastating effects of overpopulation in a world of finite resources, so he sets out to correct the problem on a universal scale, using the most brutal of methods. He doesn't really want to do it, and he certainly takes no pleasure in it, but he knows he's the only one with the will and the means to see it through, and he's utterly ruthless in the pursuit of his goal. He's still doing a terrible thing, but he's doing it to serve a higher purpose, and you can at least see his point of view, even if you don't support it. Wouldn't it be interesting if Quaritch had an equally compelling motivation? Like if he cared deeply about the troops under his command, and only committed to open warfare as a last resort? Or he lost people close to him because of the Na'vi, ultimately setting him on a path of revenge. Or he was acutely aware of the desperate situation on Earth, and was willing to do anything necessary to help humanity survive. Wouldn't a little bit of moral ambiguity make him a more interesting, nuanced and fleshed out character, without undermining his role as an antagonist? Nah, just serve up a cartoon bad guy that's irredeemably evil, so the audience can feel angry when he does bad things, and cheer when he dies. And I guess that pretty much sums up the entire movie, really. Avatar is all about surface level spectacle and shallow emotion, dazzling the viewer with grand visuals, but failing to deliver anything deeper that's worth reflecting on. Take away the 3D and the big cinema screen, and what you're left with is basically a 2.5-hour tech demo, loosely strung together by a thin, derivative plot that borrows elements from far superior movies, and simplistic characters that do the bare minimum to get you invested. A movie that doesn't earn the big emotional payoffs it tries to deliver, because it refuses to put in the work to get you there. For all the money and creativity that clearly went into its production, Avatar ultimately tells a cheap, manipulative, shallow, lazy story. And it's such a shame, because with just a bit more work and thought put into the writing, I think it could have been so much more. But hey, it made money. A lots of money. The problem is that its success was mostly a combination of good luck, good timing, and good word of mouth. Unfortunately, it's pretty rare for those three factors to line up twice in a row, especially when you leave a 12-year gap between your movies. I suspect James Cameron might learn this the hard way when Avatar 2 finally comes out. Either way, the drinker will be there to give his opinion on it. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.